First, thanks for coming. Yeah, it's really cold out. Maybe I'll start this with, I grew up in Winnipeg. This is status quo in Winnipeg, so brought a little frostiness. So in 1985, I moved to Toronto at the end of 85. And shortly thereafter, I enrolled to do my master's in art history, which I didn't make. I dropped out, because I became an art dealer instead. So it was in March 1986 that I incorporated Christopher J. Cutts Fine Art Ltd. And began my career as an art dealer. And we're celebrating 40 years of that, this year. So as you can see, I have a show called 511, because these are 5 of the Painters 11. And early on in my career, I had the good fortune of meeting these gentlemen and working with them, and I still work with their estates today. And we have this fantastic show. As you can see, I'm Harold Town, William Ronald, Tom Hodgson, Nakamura, Ray Mead, etc. I will say one thing, I was away last week. I meant to be here Saturday, but I came in, and when I came in, Shane did a fantastic job installing the show. Thank you, Shane. But I got to tell you, when I was kind of looking at the work, I just was amazed, and I kind of pinched myself a little bit. I thought, I live and work in a museum, for goodness sake. This is museum caliber work, as you guys can see it. And I can't believe it. How the heck did that happen? Anyway, I'm lucky, and believe me, it isn't wasted on me. I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had. So what I want to tell you is, the first of the P11 artists that I met was Tom Hodgson. And there's that beautiful Hodgson's right there, and there's some nice 60 watercolors behind. And I met Tom through a friend of mine that had bought a work from a cafe that was run by Kathy Good. Kathy Good, that was Tom's girlfriend, then became his wife. And that fancy restaurant, you guys remember Lotus? And then it became Soussure and all of a sudden. Well, that started because Soussure bought Kathy's little cafe on Tecumseh and started that fancy restaurant. Before it was just a cafe, and Tom would have some of his paintings hanging there, and a friend of mine bought a painting, and I remember her saying, hey, I'm going to go pick up this painting. It's Tom Hodgson. Would you like to meet him? Larry, I know you wanted to know. I didn't really know much about P11. I was actually educated in that place south of us right now. I won't name it, but anyway, États-Unis. Okay, but I had a love for abstract expressionism, so Painters 11 right away, fit my bill. And I remember when Aileen said to me, I'm going to go and pick up a Tom Hodgson. I knew who Tom Hodgson was then. I says, can I come? And we went there, and he had a kind of a studio / place right on Queen Street before it had become gentrified, when the Drake moved in and it became very fancy. It was a little bit more rugged on that part of Queen Street. And I remember going there, he just had this stack of watercolors, and I was sorting through them. And I says, hey, I'm a young. He says, sure, kid, I'll give you some of those. So he gave me that, and that's how I kind of started with P11. Now, so Tom was the first one. Now, I also want to know, I moved here in 1990, so I've been here for 36 years. And the first show I had when I came here was a Tom Hodgson show. I thought it would be fitting that I'd open up with a Hodgson show, and that was in September 1990. The next Painters 11 artist I met was Kazuo Nakamura, because I actually started working with the artist John McGregor, who showed with the Isis Gallery. And John said to me, there's a reception at the Art Gallery of Ontario for all of the artists, I guess the living artists, that are in their permanent collection. They're having a special reception. They were giving them lifetime memberships. He says, would you like to join me? I says, I'd love to join you. So we were at that, and then he says, oh, there's Kaz Nakamura. And I said, would you like to meet Kaz? I said, I'd love to meet Kaz. So I went over, and he introduces me to Kaz, and Kaz he says hello, and he's a very soft-spoken gentleman. And I says, well, what are you doing? And he started telling me about what he's doing, which is this number structure work. And he was very passionate about it. And unfortunately, it was like going over me. But I see Kaz's daughter there, Alan nodding. And I said to him, can I come and visit you? And he said, yes, for sure, come. So they lived over in Langmuir, and I would, at least once a month for a long time, go over and have a visit Kaz, and he would explain his work. And there's nothing like repetition to kind of get something in the head. So I have a foundational understanding of what Kaz was up. And believe me, it was all about the number structure work. The landscapes, his beloved landscapes, and they're lovely and everything, but he said those are superficial. It's all about the inner workings, the number structure work. Anyway, Kaz was, I met Kazuo Nakamura. I was selling some art at this time, and that's the beautiful thing of being young and not knowing any better. I literally would open up the phone book and just go through it, law firms, corporations, and then phone them up and say, hey, who's in charge of buying art? Anyway, one client I ended up with was the Swiss Bank Corporation. They had their office on the Queen's Quay. Now, they were bought up by UBS at the time. And they bought a Nakamura and a Hodgson from me. And I remember the gentleman, was a guy named Emmanuel Favre, said to me, could you get a Harold Town? I said, well, I could try. Well, opened up the phone book, the white pages, found Harold Town's number in the phone, and I phoned him up. He says, okay, kid, come on over. Now, this time, Harold was just closing his studio on Severn Street, which is behind the Canadian Tire. Now, there's a very famous studio building, was built by the Group of Seven. I think Warren Harris was part of it. And that's where Harold had his studio for many, many years. So I visited with Harold for a little while, and then he took me over to his home on Castle Frank. Now, Harold's reputation preceded him, and I was intimidated by him. Kaz was lovely. Tom was wonderful. They were all easy. Harold, it wasn't that he wasn't lovely, but I was projecting a lot. I like Mr. Town this and Mr. Town that. In fact, I remember when we were driving from his studio to his house on Castle Frank, he never got a driver's license. He would just walk and stuff like that. And I thought, I'm going to ask him if I can call him Harold. So I kind of thought, would it be okay? And his first response is, absolutely not. And of course, I was taken back. You could call me Master, Sir, etc. And then I thought, okay, it's okay to call him Harold and stuff like that. So Harold gave me a few paintings back then as well. And I started working with him. I even got the chance to go visit him on in his apple orchard out in Peterborough. That was an amazing thing. The setup he had was really something. Unfortunately, Harold passed away in 1990, at my age, 65. I'm 65 now. I was 25 when I started that. And of course, I lost touch with working with him, but 2010 came around and I ended up, I'm friends with Shelley Town and I work with the Town Estate. You'll see we got some wonderful Harold Towns, and that's been a great feather in my cap as well. So there's 3 of the 11. I thought, well, I always liked Ray Mead's work, so I phoned him, picked up the phone book, phoned him, he says, come on by. The thing that struck me about Ray that I liked, he was an older gentleman like that, and he always referred to me as old boy, I'm going to do this for you. I can paint a perfect circle. And he would show that, and he'd make these, he did this circle. And I thought, okay, Ray. Ray was a wonderful gentleman, a British guy. I really enjoyed him. So there was that. Now, Bill Ronald. Well, how did I meet Bill Ronald? Well, Bill Ronald walked into my gallery one day and announced his presence. I knew who it was. I'm here, Bill Ronald. I understand you work with some of these P11 guys. I'm the greatest. And I said, sure, okay. So I brought Ronald into the fold, and wow, he was a character, and I had some wonderful experiences with him. I'll tell you a quick little story. I remember he had a studio on Geary Avenue, and it was quite long, and you'd come into it, and he'd be sitting at the end of the studio, on a big kind of blue lazy boy chair or something like that. And he had these big paintings, like this kind of scale paintings all around him, and he'd be waving at me, come back here, kid, And then he'd get up. His knees were really bothering him at that time. He'd get up and he says, look at all. And then he looked up to the heavens and says, I don't know how I do it. I'm merely a conduit. And I just thought, wonderful. So anyway, there's the 5 of the 11. So you got, first one was Tom, then Kaz, Harold for a little while, then Ray, and then Bill Ronald, of course. And as you can see, got some wonderful Ronalds here. These happen to be the last of his thing. He died early in 98, but he made some fantastic paintings on his way out. This guy went out with a bang, not a whimper, that's for sure. I mean, this is classic 60s, 50s town. This guy, well, back then he was really riding high in the late 50s and 60s. They used to say he was the darling of Rosedale, Harold Town. And anyway, it's been a fantastic journey for me. Now, let me see. I just want to see if there's anything else I want to mention. Okay. Oh, here's another thing. I also remember in the early 90s, you know, the galleries that I revered high in Canada would have been, at this time, the Av Isaacs Gallery and the Carmen Lamanna Gallery. They were like top dog. And funny enough, as I was starting to get my footing and get going, I remember when I moved from my space over on Liberty and Mowat, that was the King and Duffer's, where to hear Christopher Hume did a piece, and he said, Christopher Cutts is coming in from the cold. Because, you know, he knew about me where I was nowhere, and I came in here, a well-appointed space. Now, you got to remember the early 90s, we were in a tough economic position there. Nobody was making a go of it, and I thought, wow. You know, I thought, here I'm making a new move to the gallery. Anyway, it was tough. I met, you know, what saved my butt at one point was a postal strike. I was a bit behind in my rent, and a friend of mine who was a curious says, look, Purelator's hiring people right now for this postal strike. So I did about 3 weeks of working for Purelator in the morning, and they paid me by the drop. I was making lots of money, like some days $400 or $500 dropping off these things. Of course, the regular Purelator guys hated me because they, you know, they weren't making that kind of money. But it's just the way the universe worked out. I was able to catch up on my rent, and so far I haven't fallen behind so far, you know, 40 years later. So we're all good here. But I do remember that Avram closed his gallery, his main gallery, in the early 90s, which was a bit of a surprise. He kept his Inuit gallery, and Carmen Lamanna got sick and died in 91, 92. And I just thought, it's kind of a changing of the guard. And, you know, I'm the new blood. So I have some great Isaacs Gallery artists, you know, Rick Gorman, Gordon Rayner. I even showed Michael Snow a couple of times. And then from the Lamanna Gallery, of course, Ron Martin. I wish Ron was here with us today. His health isn't so great, but Ron's been very important for the gallery. Murray Favreau, those are super important Lamanna galleries. So, I don't know, so probably going to be a change in the guard coming the other way. So that's 40 years. It went by in a flash. I don't know if you guys saw the picture I sent you of me. I wasn't gray when I started.
Aged very well.
Thank you, Monty. And you know, I'm excited about the next 10 years because I want us all to get back together and we'll celebrate 50 years of Christopher Cutts Gallery. Another thing I want to say, Louis, my very first assistant, and boy, I had a gold standard with Louis Jacob. And I've had many people throughout that time you know, help me. I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have these wonderful people helping me in college. Right now, Shane and Ravish, they're part of my team. And I tell you, I value you guys big time. Isaac Applebaum did a lot of copy work. It's all great to see you. All, you know, this isn't something you do on your own. You need lots of help, and I got a lot of it, and I'm grateful and thankful for all of you guys. And all you guys that visit my gallery regularly, I love to see you. Keep coming, please. And I guess that's about it. Enjoy the rest of the day. And by the way, this is just the first. We're going to celebrate several times throughout the year. It'll be the centenary of Bill Ronald. It'll be the centenary of Nakamura. I'm going to do shows celebrating both of those artists as well, as plus another group show with more my younger blood, because I do have some living contemporary artists as well. Okay. Thanks for coming. Okay.